Okay, and now we are going to go to our panel, which is called Techcos at the Edge. And I am going to put you into the capable hands of James Stuart, who's moderating this session. And James is a senior analyst, distributed and edge computing at ABI Research. James and the panel, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for that, Annie. So yes, I'm a senior analyst at ABI Research, work on the distributed and edge computing service, looking at the dynamics and interplay between the major players at the edge. So this panel is Techcos at the edge. We know the edge is a competitive space contested over by carriers, Telcos, etc., and the roles and responsibilities are still being challenged. So we'd like to discuss the degree to which the telcos can use the edge opportunities to sell technology in this space to the enterprise. On the panel, we have Schlager, Head of Network Evolution within the Group Technology and Future Services area of A1 Group. Terje Jensen, SVP, Head of Network Architecture at Telenor, and Neil McRae, MD Architecture and Strategy at BT Group. I don't know if you'd all like to introduce yourself very briefly and give us an insight into how your role is relevant to the panel discussion, Techcos at the Edge.
Yeah, so very good. I will start. So my name is Kurt, as already introduced. I am heading network evolution on the A1 group level. So therefore, everything from core transport and the access, including the edge. And for us as A1 group, the edge is certainly a key element to where we see new value-added services being orchestrated and being distributed to our clients.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Terje Jensen. I'm heading up the global network architect team in Telenor. So as part of that, we are also responsible for the cloud platform and also edge cloud. So we are delivering commercial contracts on edge cloud to customers, and also have been running a number of customer pilots there. So happy to share some insights and some learnings and some observations from that in this session.
Thank you. Lastly, Neil.
Yeah, hi, I'm Neil McRae. So I look after anything with a network in it at BT, and including the platforms that underpin the network, such as cloud, but also run our overall strategy for technology.
Thanks, Neil. So I guess that leads nicely into the first question. Is it possible for you to outline how your companies aim to compete at the edge? What's the strategy?
Yeah, maybe I start if I can. As said, for us, the edge is a critical node in order to deliver new value-added services, both on the low latency side when we're talking in the 5G slicing domain, but certainly also for us as a cost reduction factor to keep the traffic which is generated locally actually local. One of these examples could be the CDNs, actually the content distribution networks, where we would want to benefit from the edge node, or like we've heard in the previous presentation, actually the virtualization of the baseband on top of what the standard enterprise would benefit from when it comes to mobile private networks actually.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a unique selling point that differentiates you from your competition and the hyperscalers in this field?
I think when it comes to the unique selling point, it is our end-to-end understanding of the pain point of our enterprise customers primarily, where we can and are able to design those end-to-end solutions on top of, let me say, the benefits which a hyperscaler can deliver with the scale of the infrastructure scaling up and down. We understand the pains and hence can make tailor-made solutions, and that is, I think, one of the USPs we are having as a A1 group.
Okay, thank you. Neil, Terje,
Yeah.
Does that ring true with your strategies too, or?
Well, I mean, edge is kind of a small word that means many different big things, which is always the challenge. So, we kind of look at it as in kind of 3 or 4 flavors. One is what I call kind of the most basic edge services, where we're just co-locating other people's platforms, and we do a bit of that. It's not probably going to make anyone rich, but for some customers, they want to work with certain partners. And we need to be open to that, and open to connect them. We also run our own BT network cloud that kind of, if we need be, covers all aspects of both kind of core cloud compute, but we can take the platform to edge, as Marcin said. We're using that today for Met compliant CDN delivery, and we're able to, people say CDNs, didn't we do them in kind of 10 years ago? But actually, the reality is that we as telcos need to take more ownership of CDN, because we know where our customers are, we know what they're doing with the network, and only we can give them the service and the quality of service and the service experience that they want, and frankly that they pay us for. So CDN's been a big focus for us, and we deliver almost, I think, 12 to 20% of our traffic through our own CDN now, with some big content providers using it. But we're also using our cloud platform at the edge for private networks, not just the RAN part, but the core as well. And in enterprises, we're seeing real momentum in private networks, and actually probably more momentum than I expected. In all honesty, I think customers are starting to find more ways of leveraging devices and automation in their own organizations, where they want to have guaranteed quality around the network, and also control over policies and procedures and the underlying automation they want to have in their own kind of digital world. So we're using Edge to deliver that, and then we're also using Edge to deliver advanced VR and video services for gaming and for entertainment purposes. That's probably more of a trial / pilot, but it's starting to get momentum, and we're using Edge for streaming video games. But that's pretty straight. It's not much different from streaming video in many respects. And then we're starting to really take the private networks and some of the other 5G use cases into big areas like Belfast Harbour, where we're helping them improve the automation of the harbour and the port in ways that they would never been able to do had they not had edge compute and they not had private networks. And I think, James, if you ask us, 5 years from now, what did edge look like? Here's what I promise you: there'll be about 20 things none of us figured out that it would become, and that's one of the great things about being a network operator, is seeing both our own engineers' ingenuity in creating edge capability, but also our customers and partners creating new things with edge that hadn't really occurred to us. Another example of that is we're leveraging NVIDIA GPUs to do digital twins for design companies that were working from home during COVID. They're not able to have the kind of compute power in their home, but they can get it fairly close. And we did a trial with a few design companies and manufacturers where we actually also put 3D printers. So as they wanted to print a prototype, they were able to do that locally using a kind of digital twin approach. So that's kind of how we see edge, and we see edge as an enabler for us to provide more solutions-based services to many different verticals: healthcare, design, transportation, retail, etc., etc.
So yeah, thank you. A very diverse set of use cases, and I think we'll touch on some use cases further on. Terje, did you have anything to add to that with respect to?
Yeah, so maybe I can offer maybe a different perspective. I think so we are approaching the edge cloud from the call it the customer centric perspective. So having the customer dialogues on the asking questions like, okay, so what are your needs today? What are your things you want to achieve, and when do you want to achieve it? And then I think it's very important what mentioned earlier, that edge is one of the tools there in the toolbox to solve the customer needs. And we see, as was also mentioned, that edge can mean different things. And so the way we are phrasing it, like edge is where you actually need it to be. So it's not like edge cloud is defined in a certain place or a certain location, but it's one of the tools which you can put on the premises. You can put it on the far edge. You can put it more central and so forth. And we basically see, I think, is also just to echo what Neil said on the enterprise side, that a lot of the requirements they come with, which are typically triggering edge this cloud discussion these days, is about controlling where information is stored and the robustness, autonomy, if you want. So they want to have make sure that information is never leaving the campus, for example. So we have requests, for example, from the health sector, where there are hospitals who say that my records of the patients should never leave the hospital campus. So that means that there needs to be at least some storage facilities. Typically, these days we are talking about a cloud environment, and then of course an edge cloud environment to do that. So I think that's the way we are approaching it. So it's more like one of the tools in the toolbox for typically solving a bigger customer need in a way. So the way we would like that, we are our unique selling point in a way that typically edge doesn't have to be, but typically it comes with a request for connectivity. And connectivity means of coverage within a building, or it could be a campus or even a national or wide area connectivity. And then with more applications or a cloud environment related to that. So that's typically the way we are approaching it with okay, so what's your need and how can we develop this and come with a proposal through a dialogue with the customer. And it's also what I think what mentioned earlier is that we see that the customer needs can be staged in many respects. You can start on some steps and then you can build on that. And then I fully agree what Neil said. And I'm quite sure that we haven't seen all the applications and the uses of edge cloud 5 years from now, or even maybe shorter than what we can think of today.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting the perspective you give on data and security. I know in the Europe-focused companies, GDPR is very important, but when you speak to people in other parts of the world, it's often sort of the third thing on the list rather than the second thing on the list, which is very interesting. Talking about preparation and use cases, what work have your companies been doing to prepare to compete in the space, and what use cases has this highlighted and brought to the front that you weren't necessarily expecting, and what have you learned through these processes?
If I start again, very early in the early phases of 5G, actually, we've started to collaborate a lot with universities in put in place actually what we call the 5G playground in Austria, in the south of Austria, in Carinthia, where we are testing new use cases with startups, with the university, very much in autonomous vehicle, may that be drones or driving, HD video streaming from that drones for surveillance use cases, and additional low latency services which you can think of. Currently, and this is also where I sort of fully agree with Terje as well. Currently, what we see is edge very much woven into the need of our customers to have dedicated networks, which are very much resilient. One of the examples I can bring is that we have put in place a dedicated network for the airport in Vienna, with the full, which is disconnected from the macro network, keeps information local, has a dedicated communication service to the workers, to the ground staff, which is indeed very much required by this mission critical, let me say, services which our customer has. And I think it will evolve from there. So further on, as we start with the basic, to fulfill again the basic need of communication and have data stored locally, it will evolve towards automation. It will furthermore unleash this industry 4.0 use cases, which we are all looking for with the age of 5G actually. And I think again, this is the let me say the lighthouses we've put in place from a customer point of view.
That's very interesting. I mean, what is the main driver for that specific example? Is it the low latency? Is it the security, or is it a combination of everything?
Yeah, I think it very much depends on the use case, honestly. It has been for a long time that, you know, keep myself local, keep the storage local, keep security at the heart of everything. And now it evolves towards low latency. This is what we're seeing, and this is the major demands on all of our markets, actually, from our enterprise customers at least.
Thanks, Neil. Are you seeing a similar story in the use cases that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of, I think there's some customers who are really clear about what they want. I think airports is a great example. You know, and you know, we've done some solutions there, but I think there's also some customers that are still kind of trying to experiment, understand what, you know, how do they take advantage of this, but also thinking differently about you know, what edge and the power of edge can do for them. And I you know, I kind of talk about an example quite often where, you know, we use video a lot more than people realize to assist with a customer experience situation, both in externally and indoors. So if you imagine, you know, we have an edge service called Camera as a Service, whereby we can deploy video analytics onto any sort of existing video platform and give much more insight to what customers are doing in a shopping center, what they're doing in a stadium, how well they're, you know, what they're thinking and behaving as they're queuing up. And of course, there's a kind of double-edged sword on that, because, you know, a lot of people start getting nervous about privacy, and quite rightly so. But also, you know, if it, you know, there's many situations where by identifying that there's a problem using this type of analytics, we can improve the experience, and we've actually proven that in a location here in the UK where by identifying that there was a problem that normally the host venue would never have been able to identify, they're able to improve that experience. And you know, and then that you know, that drives up, well, I want to come back here because I had such a great experience. And you know, and then there's other uses of that around what, you know, in your store, where are people going, what are they doing, what are they picking up, what are they putting back down, what did they buy versus what they didn't buy, and give a much more insight in retail, and in particular where, you know, bricks and mortar retail is everly challenging in terms of the cost of running bricks and mortar and the value that you get out of it, as many things have moved to kind of digital selling. But you know, again, we've done some retail pilots where that's shown real value, and customers, our customers want to deploy it. And then the other area we're seeing a lot of interest is kind of in defense, where, you know, what does the digital battlefield look like? And you know, kind of to some extent a scary proposition, but it's something that you know, is clearly applies in terms of how do you use these types of solutions and services in that use case. And again, we've done some work with some platforms here in the UK and outside of the UK to see actually how can edge compute give you an advantage, and that's, you know, kind of building effectively an edge private network compute platform and parachuting it into the battlefield, and you know, there's many challenges to overcome, which actually help you in other use cases. And then in transportation, you know, how do we leverage edge compute in a way that gives us much better use of our and experience in our transportation networks? How are we certain about what people's you know, how people use public transport? How do they use roads? And actually, is there more data that we can pull from those environments that allow us to better use to better use those type of environments for, you know, rather than everyone getting in their car, is there a way that we can give more information to say, actually, here's a better way of taking this journey? And actually, we've also used edge compute with things like school buses to plot the most optimal routes. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but we have one of the councils near our Adastro labs in Ipswich, where we made a massive difference to how reliable the transport service was, and most importantly, how much energy the transport service used. And that's, you know, with in today's world, with energy prices and decarbonisation, that's something that they hugely value. So, and that's one of the ideas that, you know, you would never have thought, was someone really going to find that valuable? But if you've got thousands of school buses running around, you know, actually these can be, these sort of solutions can be hugely valuable to them. And that plugs into a wider smart city use case for, you know, more effective smart refuge collection, more effective smart usage of data, and giving town halls and councils more data about what their users are doing and why. And again, as the world changes coming out of the pandemic, where, you know, what is the use case for cities in the future? Because they're not what they, you know, I don't think there's a city in the world that's how it was pre-pandemic. And I think we're starting to use both our public network and some private smart city networks to give councils and town planners more insight as to what the city of the future might look like. And you know, that's a really fantastic use case, and one we did a while ago, you know, which was working with motorsport to improve their ability to react to different situations on the track, and you know, we saw some significant results by having edge compute. Rather than them having to loads of compute with them, they're able to plug in, use edge compute, and recalculate and resimulate things without the need or the expense of having to run their own infrastructure. So, but where we're trying to get to is a world where, I said this in our presentation yesterday, where we can determine some of these use cases. A lot of these use cases are kind of we call them pets. They're very unique to certain customers. They're very unique to certain industries. What we're trying to do is now turn them into cattle, whereby, you know, we can shepherd the same sort of use case, get economies of scale, which is what telco is all about in the end, and actually really make a return and make money on some of these use cases. That requires us to work with partners in building and kind of solutionifying, if that's such a word, something that we can easily roll out to different types of customer very quickly, and taking what we learn from one industry and taking that to another industry in a way that, you know, makes more sense than many people realize. It's amazing what the car industry has learned about retail that the clothes and fashion industry has no idea about. And again, that's you know, leveraging cameras and leveraging sensors, we're able to share insight about what customers are doing and how they behave, and I think that's something that we'll continue to see a lot more of.
Before I move on to Terje, I just wanted to ask very quickly, with respect to the cameras, the example you gave of the venues, etc. How is the industry viewing the privacy of data with respect to streaming video, consuming it, and acting on it there and then, so the data is disposed of and the result only is stored. Is that an acceptable thing to do?
Well, I think I think everyone has their own view of that. I mean, we have very we have very tight privacy laws here in Europe. Even though UK is not part of Europe, we're still very focused on GDPR. In fact, the UK recently was seen as a leader in GDPR, even though we've left Europe, which I found slightly amusing. But look, I think there's the way I look at that is very much if we don't treat our customers' data and privacy with respect, we'll just lose the ability to use it. So it's a trust model, and at the heart of BT, in fact, I think this is where telcos have got a massive advantage over the hyperscalers. We are seen as trusted entities. Marcin talked about healthcare. That certainly we've seen a similar thing where the NHS service here in the UK want to work with us, but they're not so keen to work with hyperscalers because they're concerned about data. I think in the whole data privacy space, I think we're very much at the egg has cracked sort of state of maturity. I think we've got a lot to learn, and we're learning very quickly. And I think GDPR is, and actually even before GDPR, if you look at what we had in the UK before the ICO, what GDPR did was bring a little clarity about the seriousness of data privacy, but actually many things were already in place. So I think that there are methods around ensuring that data is kept secure. And again, another edge use case we have is based upon QKD security at the network level. So one of our pilot networks, we're using quantum key distribution to encrypt and secure the data. And the way that QKD works, it's a great example of a service that leverages edge. Is you have a way of sharing keys that if it's intercepted, you know about it because the photons and the light have changed. I could talk about this for quite some time, but it also gives a quantum compute encryption. So if quantum computers, make the line of day, this is actually quantum proof because you can continually change the key and do it in a secure and manageable way. And we're bringing as much around those technologies as well as the kind of edge and the data usage. And also we're looking at how do we do kind of what we call a data locker for our customers. And this isn't so much of an edge service, but I think it's a crucially important service to edge, which is if you apply for a mortgage, James, today, you send tons of data to your bank. You don't know what happens to it. Wouldn't it be great if we had a platform where you had all your data in your own data store? The bank understood how that worked. And if you applied for a mortgage, the bank asks your data locker, does James qualify for this mortgage? And rather than exchange loads of data, the system says yes. And we're seeing some really big excitement around that. We've got some stuff running now, and that just allows many different ways of you managing and containing your data rather than clicking OK on every time it asks to use your data. But there is so much for us to learn and understand, and also education of the users. My granddaughter, she's a big Roblox fan. She clicks yes to anything that they ask. And I'm not sure that's always the best thing, although she loves the game.
Okay, thanks. And Kurt, I'll circle back. Do you have any examples of use cases and customer experiences you can share? And what are the key use cases your clients are interested in?
Yeah, and I think it's just to go quickly back to what Kurt mentioned some minutes ago. So we were also starting, from believing that edge, is basically triggered from latency or the distance between the different customers or sources of data and the processing and control. And then we were sitting down with a few customers and then say that actually, no, our needs is more like on the robustness, resilience, local storage, and be on top of knowing where my data is stored. So that was some of the initial use cases where we triggered the use of edge cloud. Now we are then seeing, of course, additional cases as well, driven by latency, where we of course have to design both the edge cloud and the network to make this in the same way to comply with these kind of things. So that's a bit of a learning, at least from our side, on the different use cases and different trigger points for edge cloud. Then another major, and coming back to a couple of use cases, another major learning for us was that we actually started, a couple of years ago, saying that edge cloud, we can look into verticals and then come with vertical solutions. And that was a big mistake. So we sat down with and just take health, I think, with some examples, and we can go through now 4 examples within the health sector, which have rather different, and they are coming from the hospitals and health authorities, and they have very, very different starting points. So one of them are actually building a new hospital, and they want an on-campus complete mobile network with an edge cloud for local storage of the patient's records and the kind of applications they have running in order to make the hospital serve their purpose in a way. So they want to be completely autonomic in the sense that independent on the rest of the world. So that's their need for these kind of things. Then the second hospital or health authority in the same country, they were coming from that we really don't want to build another hospital. So we were rather, the patients can be wherever they want, and we just have the monitoring mounted on top of the patients, and the sensors are reporting continuously back to the qualified personnel on is they okay, the patients, and if not, there should be analytics running to trigger any abnormal things, and then they could be to trigger and to take some action. So that's another kind of use of local storage of. Then of course it was the wide area network which was used, and then the local storage of that information. So that was another use case within the health sector. Then we have a third use case, which were maybe a bit futuristic, but it was combining with a 5G and a pill camera. So you swallow a camera, and then it goes traverses to your system, and the doctor actually needs to switch on and needs to guide it as it passes through your system, just to record what's happening there and try to control it. And that was actually a latency case. Because it needs to control it within a couple of milliseconds to get the right pictures. Believe it or not. So that was also the kind of an aha experience from us. Then the fourth use case was actually also within the health sector, where they actually wanted to start the treatment of the patients when the ambulance has reached the site. So when you have got the patients onto the ambulance, you actually want to start monitoring and just prepare before you can get to the hospital. So that's also a health sector. So even within the health sector, 4 completely different starting points, 4 completely different needs, which all of them are asking for capacity and also local storage to some extent, not only local within not local within the campus, but at least within the national borders or within the regions to make sure that this is happening. So that's one of the experience on some of the use cases there. Just to wonder what Neil was mentioning, we actually have already delivered what we call a cloud or a mobile network on wheels. So we have in a trailer a full-blown mobile network with an edge cloud components with the defense. So it's this kind of a search and rescue, for example, use case. We are using a similar setup for what is the Norwegian broadcasting company. So when they are traveling to a sports event, with probably a ski jump, which is I wouldn't say very popular, but at least kind of popular in Norway. So they want to bring this part of the studio with them. So that's actually also on wheels. So that's the running applications and the connectivity on the trailer there. So there are kind of also interesting use cases which are connectivity or autonomous in a way, and they're also moving around. And back to the privacy discussion, what you just had, because we also have faced, of course, similar issues there. But in some of the use cases, it's kind of very good because we are not monitoring people at all. We are rather monitoring fish, for example, in the fish farms. We are monitoring containers in the port harbor cases, because insurance is an issue in that if the containers are damaged, for example. So those are some of the use cases there which are based on video and video analytics and trying to recognize patterns or conditions and doing that. So I think that's just a couple of use cases what we have been working on, which are also driving different combinations of 5G or private network and edge cloud. And of course, on top of that, analytics, security, operations, device management, a lot of other building blocks as well, which comes on top of that, which is an opportunity for all the operators, I guess, to engage.
Okay, thank you very much. I have plenty more questions, but we're starting to get a few come through, and I realize we're running low on time. We have one question. Can you provide your view on NPN and roaming with public networks? Anybody care to take that?
Sorry, yeah, come.
Was that the question to me? Sorry. Oh, well, to anybody who chooses to.
Yeah. So when you go.
Oh, sorry. No. So we are because there are different ways to implement the private network as we see it. One way, of course, is an isolated purpose-built on-campus private network, which is with a mobile core, for example, on the campus. But there are also ways to with using kind of pre-slicing in a way. So using the public network to do that, and then of course roaming in quotes comes out of the box. It's already part of the package. On doing that, but there are ways also to support roaming between the dedicated private network or isolated private network and the public network. So there are ways to do that. So that's shouldn't be a major issue at least.
Shouldn't be an issue, and I fully agree and would second that. We have private networks like the aforementioned airport, which even has a dedicated mobile network code actually to keep it completely separate from anything. On the other hand, I believe that exactly this need for roaming, like Terje said, will eventually lead to the stronger adoption of the slicing, let me call it, feature of 5G, and that the dedicated NPN will remain a rather, let me say, industries or let's say large enterprise phenomenon in a way, whereas slicing delivers more cost-effective and seamless and quality assured service to the enterprise or let me say any public customers. And
thanks,
through that enabling roaming.
Neil, did you have anything to add to that, or?
Not really. I mean, I'm still kind of a bit unconvinced about how slicing is going to really help us, except in extreme cases. But I don't see any big challenges of making private and public networks roaming, other than just ensuring the customer is clear about what that means for them and what accountabilities and responsibilities are between the public and private network, and we're there to help with that. But obviously, it's our customers who want to run their own policies. It's one of the reasons why they want a private network. So it's important that we help them through ensuring what they're doing makes sense for them.
Okay, thank you, Neil. We have another question. As the capacity of transport and radio is becoming bigger and cheaper, don't you think the only valid use case for edge would be time-critical use cases? I think we've touched on that, but if anybody would like to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to comment on that. There's this law. It's called Shannon, and you wouldn't believe how close we are to it. So when I hear saying that it's becoming bigger and cheaper and there's more bandwidth, that kind of freaks me out a little bit, because I'm not sure we see it, particularly in radio, and I'm not sure we see radio getting cheap enough to really warrant that sort of thinking. Plus, it's not just about the radio or the transport. It's about optimizing energy use and resource use, and increasingly, CDN's a big part in helping us manage power utilization in a very big way.
I fully agree, Neil. I think the time of us having shipped traffic from the access all the way down the core and back again, that is over. And in an age of ESG, where every one of us needs to focus on our environmental, well-being in that sense, I think this is key for us to have something like the edge to keep the traffic local.
If I may just very shortly add, I think I fully agree on what was said, but on top of that, it's also important to look into the protocols, on top of the application side. So it's not messed up on that level. And we have seen a few cases actually that there are a lot of messages passing back and forth. So we are tuning on milliseconds, on the radio and the transport, and then it just mess it up with a lot of messages flowing back and forth or whatever. Yeah.
And
So
also
application-aware networking. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and spot on, Terje, and also just to build on that, look, I can take more latency out by putting fibre into a building and using radio. From any part of the UK to across the longest distance, it's kind of 9 milliseconds on fibre. When I start to add a radio overhead, you're into the 20-30 even with standalone. So, latency is important, but I think it's probably not the biggest driver of edge in my mind.
Thanks, Neil. Annie, do we have time for anything else? We're 1 minute.
I think you've come to the end of your lollipop, I'm afraid. Just about.
Very enjoyable it was too.
Yes, it was.
I didn't get one.
A question in the Q&A channel that you could, if any of you want to take offline, and I'm sorry, Ken, that we didn't get you. But Terje, James, Neil and Kurt, thank you very much indeed. I thought that was really entertaining, and it's good to hear beyond the usual use cases trotted out, I thought. It wasn't the same old stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks for having us, Annie.
Thank
Thank you very much. See you soon, I hope.
Thanks, guys.